Welcome back, everybody. We are here and news is breaking. There's just an SEC filing that came out from Kraft Heinz. That's obviously a big Berkshire Hathaway holding. Kraft Heinz says that it will restate earnings for 2016 and 2017 due to misstatements in the original filings. It does not, however, believe that the misstatements are what they call quantitatively material to any individual reporting period. It says that the impact on adjusted earnings is expected to be less than 2% for each year. Kraft Heinz says that it has now completed an investigation that shows several employees in its procurement operation engaged in misconduct, but none of those were members of senior management. Our guest today, again, is Warren Buffett. He's the chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, which owns a major portion of Kraft Heinz. And Warren, what do you think of this? This news just hitting while we're sitting here.
Well, that's more or less what I've heard. I'm not on the board anymore, but Greg Abel and Tracy Britt Kuhl are on, and so I've heard from them. This is an update that I heard last night and they can't issue the first quarter reports until the 10K is filed, and they can't file the 10K till Price Waterhouse signs off on it, and that apparently is going to require a restatement of a few years, and we could not report any earnings from Kraft Heinz in the first quarter, because if we get a dividend from Bank of America, that dividend goes into earnings. But because we have over 20% of Kraft Heinz, we don't report the dividends, we report the earnings. So we received a dividend of about $130 million in the first quarter, but that we don't report that. And we expected to get the earnings before we issued our own report, but when the time came to issue our report and we didn't have anything, we put a zero in there and explained it in our release last Saturday, and this is just a further indication of the facts as they stand now. At some point, Price Waterhouse will need to be happy with the figures they're reporting, and that evidently involves a restatement. And at that time, my guess is the quarterly figures become quite current, and that we keep picking up our share of the earnings.
I mean, this has been a long standoff period between PwC and the company. If they've missed all of the deadline to get the numbers to you at that point, what happened?
Yeah, we didn't expect it. And, I thought that we would have the earnings on time. And Kraft announced their earnings for last year, but they had not been signed off on by their auditors. So while they released them publicly, they couldn't file the 10K with the SEC subsequently. That's not unusual for companies to announce the earnings before they've actually got the sign off. But in any event, it's just, we thought we were going to get them this week or next week, whatever it might be. And then last Saturday came, and that's our time for releasing quarterly earnings. We did not have them, so we stuck nothing in there, and then had a footnote, and we put in our press release as well that we just didn't have the figures.
If they're restating their earnings, does that mean Berkshire Hathaway will also have to restate its earnings?
No, it would be so immaterial by the time you take just our share, and we're a much larger company. So I don't know exactly what we do when we get, if it gets into the second quarter. I don't know whether we pick up 2 quarters in 1 quarter or exactly how that works.
They said that this is they've wrapped up this investigation. Are you satisfied with what you've heard from that part of the investigation, or do you know the details?
I don't know about that. I do know that because I've been kept abreast of some of the things. I don't listen in on directors' calls or anything like that, but Greg tells me what's the high points of what, or the low points of what's happened. And we have a terrific head of the audit committee, Jack Pope. He's an independent director. Mm-hmm. He knows this sort of thing, and he's put in the hours on it. And so I feel very good about the fact that Jack is he's really in charge of things from the standpoint of the directors.
Does the company have your confidence?
The company has my confidence.
You had talked about it over the weekend, where you said that What you paid for Kraft was too much in hindsight.
Exactly.
Not what you paid for Heinz.
That's correct. If we just bought Heinz, it'd be a better investment. And we'd own 50 odd, just over 50% of it, of a business that would be doing fine in relation to what we paid for it.
In a situation where you've determined that you've now paid too much, what do you do?
I paid too much for stocks. I paid too much for a lot of things. Time usually works it out, but it means that capital could have been better deployed in other areas. You can always pay too much for a business, and I've done it with stocks many times. I've done it with businesses. We've got at Berkshire, we have at least a half a dozen businesses. And I can't even use a we there. I got to say I paid too much. So, and if we make the next 10 deals we make, there will be a couple where it'll turn out that I paid too much.